Telangana crossed the 1 lakh number for the corona positive cases over the weekend, and now they have also ramped up testing. Andhra, on the other hand, 3,61,000 is the number of cases, with 8,601 cases being reported in the last 24 hours. Even as this is happening, the Telangana government has announced that school's academic year is going to begin from the 1st of September. They want to start distance learning as well as e-learning from the 1st of September with whatever they have. But activists are actually worried that are many of these children, especially in the government schools, going to come back to schools. The children from the vulnerable families, it is estimated that as many as 12 lakh children could actually become potentially child labor because of the distress that the families are facing during this corona pandemic. I'm joined by Isidore Phillips, who is in fact the founder of Divya Disha, and he, along with the HCL Foundation, have done a study of about 1,500 families of school-going children, government school-going children. Isidore, thanks for joining us. Take us through what exactly does your study say when you have studied 1,500 school children and you're saying more than 50% of these families have actually lost their livelihood?
We had done a study recently in collaboration with the HCL Foundation, for whom we do a project here in Hyderabad. About 1,500 families were surveyed as a part of the project. What was very, very surprising is, out of the 1,500 families, when we did a detailed analysis of a lot of families, almost about 50 to 54% of families have reported some loss of livelihood, jobs getting lost of either the father or the mother or the brother or a sister. In some particular families, what we noticed, almost about 30% of the families where there is no bread earner right now, and the families are still running. So the biggest question and the dilemma for them is, how do you expect us to survive? And when we pointed the figures of the ration that is coming in, they said all we get is rice. How do you expect us to survive? And now it is against this particular background of family distress, we talk about children, girls, women, needs and issues. We are talking about schools. From March, the schools have been closed. For many people, it's a question of, should we do online education or should we do offline education? And my question is, when the family distress is extremely high, there is nobody employed in that family, no money coming in. The biggest question that we are battling in the HCL project that we do is, how do we ensure that the children come back to school? Because all of them, given their vulnerabilities today, are potential child labor. Our job is to ensure that they survive the pandemic, one, that the families survive the pandemic, economically they become a little more better so that the child can be free to go back to school.
One of course is a question of survival, but second is of nutrition. At a time when a state like Telangana is actually not even providing midday meals, which should have been an entitlement for the children, what is the kind of impact that you're seeing on the children, their nutrition and other needs?
So I think when we're talking about children and the impact of loss of livelihood in the families, automatically it's an issue of nutrition. At least when the children used to go to school, there used to be at least one assured meal a day, the midday meal. Even that is actually deprived. That also is taken away from the children. So children are left high and dry. The families are really struggling. Now in this particular scenario, how do you expect children to kind of grow healthily? We are talking of safety. Yes, they need to be safe from corona. But what about their health requirements? What about their nutritional requirements? What about their educational requirement? What about the recreational requirements of the children? And I think in the pandemic situation right now, we seem to be disregarding every other right of a child, or even that the children exist. And I think that is what is very worrying.
In rural Telangana, we found many children, in fact, were working on the farms or grazing cattle. Your studies in the urban setting in Hyderabad, are you saying that these children are on the lookout for jobs, or are they already working in many of these kind of jobs that they may find?
You are absolutely right, Uma. This is what is happening right now, and we have seen and our concern comes in from the fact because a whole lot of them already are in smaller employments within their house. Kirana shop, mechanic shop, the little chai bandi there, dropping milk packets in people's houses, any employment, anything that can bring in a little bit of income. And this is what we are worried, because the induction into labor, the process seems to have begun. And with the whole outflow of labor from Hyderabad, what we are also worried is, I hope the children are not being pushed into to take their places.
One of the impacts that we saw was of migration. You know, corona pandemic, when it happened, a lot of migration happened. What has been the impact of this kind of a migration from urban areas to the rural areas, and perhaps also being uprooted from one part of the city to another because they can't pay a rent or because they have to change schools?
Now, a few families which actually moved from Hyderabad back to their native places. And when we spoke to them, they said, we were so scared, we wanted to get back home. We reached our native place and there is nothing that we can do there. Our situation here is worse and we want to come back. We are waiting for things to become a little more better. We want to come back to Hyderabad, because at least we get to do something there. So the waiting, so this whole disruption in lives, disruption is going to be very, very costly for them. So they want to come back. There are other families who have moved from one location to another because they lost employment. They moved in closer to factory locations and now they walk. Any job is good job. There are other people who used to be in construction labor, under a maestri, under a broker, but now they go and stand in this labor addas waiting for employment. They say if they are lucky we get something, otherwise we come back at the end of the day, nothing. And this situation of hopelessness, of looking for a glimmer of hope, is actually a big impact on children's lives there.
So economic distress of families having a huge impact, in fact, on the children themselves, especially those who are in the most vulnerable of those families. Thank you so much, Isidore Phillips, for joining us with those details.